Hello and welcome to the Say Yes Movement podcast with Heather and John, where we help you with your professional and personal growth, helping you say yes to all the scary stuff. Hey Heather, how's it going?
It's going good, John. It's going good. Listen, I want to keep talking about goal setting because we just sort of touched on it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we've both had some of our listeners reach out to learn a little bit more about the process of reflection and setting goals. But I also wanted to share something that I've been doing with my students that's been pretty incredibly powerful. And that is a personal SWOT analysis. So
Okay.
for those of you that are not
Tell me
familiar with a
more.
SWOT analysis, it is your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and threats. And this is normally done in a company, but it's really powerful when you do it for yourself. And John, I know that you have something similar when you coach people through career transitions. So I think it's a really good place to start the conversation because it's not just about reflection and goal setting. It's about knowing how do you actually play to your strengths and what are the
Mm-hmm.
things that are going to pop up, because challenges and fears and anxiety are all part of the natural process, and we should actually enjoy them. We should just anticipate them and go, yes, this is when it's happening. Woo, this means I'm out of my comfort zone.
Well, even as you're saying that, the one thing that's showing up for me is I don't even think people know what their strengths are, right? And it's
Mm,
interesting because as you go through the product, strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So we're going to have you kind of dissect that a little bit and how we can start to break those down. But I'm thinking, how many people even know what their strengths are, right? Like
yes.
even as I'm thinking about it, I'm like, what are my strengths, right? Like I know for the most part what some of my strengths are, but like, do I really, really know, right? So help me understand. So if you're walking, as you were walking your students through this exercise, what were some of the things that you had them look at when they were working on their strengths specifically?
Well, first of all, the process of your strengths, you're right. Most people are
Mm-hmm.
not able to just like, oh, let me write down all the things that I'm good at. And so asking questions about what they love to do outside of their job or in their spare time is a really good way that I uncover someone's strengths. But the tip that I'll give the listeners right now is this is a conversation that you want to have with people that are close to you. So not your spouse, that's too close, but the people that you work with, the people that you converse with on a regular basis, it might be peers at work, it might be a friend. Ask them what stands out for you as strengths. And that way
Mm-hmm.
you can see what other people are experiencing you as at. But here's why I love that question about what do you love about, like, what do you do in your spare time? And there's actually a TV show right now that I'm watching. It's called Bull, and it's about jury duty and watching the
Mm-hmm.
psychology of jury duty. And I love watching this because John, our NLP comes in almost every single episode, our neuro linguistic programming coaching. But it's the process of understanding where people's mindset are. So they ask really strange questions like, "Do you rather bake or cook?" And that's how they decide whether to have juries on the stand or not. And
Mm-hmm.
here's what uncovers with that. So a baker has to be precise because baking is all about precision. So let's say I ask someone what they love doing and they say I love baking, then I know that they're going to be very detail oriented. So if the job that I'm hiring them for or interviewing for is a detail oriented job, perfect. But let's say they say, you know what, I love trying new recipes, I love just trying to figure out in my kitchen what I'm going to do. That means that they're probably going to be able to thrive in chaos. So asking these questions about what they're good at or what they enjoy doing gives me some insight into behind the scenes where their brain goes, where they love to thrive. And John, I know you use these questions all the time. What's some of the insights that you've been able to gather from that?
Yeah, as you were saying that, the one thing that showed up for me, and I used to do this in workshops, especially when I was doing career development with folks, right? One of the questions so try to figure out what your strengths are, what are you good at, but if you're not sure, right? So this is
Mm.
for the brave out there, right? So if you're not
Ooh,
sure,
for the brain.
for the brave, yeah, here we go. You ready for this? For those that aren't sure, put it on social media. What are my strengths, right?
Ooh.
Like it's a great, it's one of the exercises I use for branding, right? Like, who do I represent? How do I show up as? When you think of me, what are the 5 words that show up for you? Right? Like, that was a question that I would ask. But you could take this same exercise and say, what are the 5 words that, when it comes from a strength perspective, what do you think the 5 things are that I'm strong at? Right? And just actually, I still do this exercise today, right? I still ask people on my social, hey, what shows up for you when you think of me, right? Like, what are 5 words that you would use to describe me?
Well, if this is only for the brave and we're always about pushing ourselves into the comfort zone, I think we put it out to our listeners right now. If you want to comment what the strengths are of me and John, we can put it out into public. We are that brave, I think. I don't know. I'm a little bit scared, but we'd love to hear your comments. Either message us privately or put it right here in the podcast, because we would love to actually take that and play with it a little bit. So
yeah, no, and so what was really neat is I would do this in these workshops, and we would do them live, right? We would create social media posts, we would put them out on Facebook or LinkedIn, and sometimes, people would respond right away to, here are the 5 things that show up for me. And what was beautiful about that exercise is people always thought more highly, like the people responding to the post always thought more highly of the person than the person thought of themselves.
oh, isn't that
Right?
the truth? Isn't that the
And
truth?
it's
Yes.
like, wow. Like, people would and it was beautiful because as we're doing them live, we'd be in a room together and they would get people responding and they're like, wow, I didn't know people looked at me like that.
Well,
Right?
and you'll get new information. So I remember doing this with my team, and then it became part of my introduction. As new people would join the team, I would actually send them to go ask what kind of boss I am, because I can tell them I'm a open door policy, all these things, but they actually should hear from the people that reported to me. And what I uncovered was what they were saying behind my back, but in front of me as well, was, don't tell Heather what you're afraid of, because she'll make you do it. And so this concept of get out of your comfort zone, say yes to things that scare you, this was in the making 10 years ago, John, as that was part of my value system. And so you can also uncover what people are saying about you, or what they and the good stuff, of course. And that really became a highlight for me, because I didn't realize that was what was resonating with the people around me. And it was exactly what I wanted to resonate. So it was perfect. So that's the strengths part of the personal SWOT. Now, the weaknesses, this is those areas that you're not good at because it doesn't interest you. It's not what you're good at because I don't want this to be against you. It's just stuff that you're not good at. So for me, detail oriented. Nope. If I need to sit down and do my taxes, that feels like pins and needles in my face. Like, it's just not what I love to do. So I've got to know what my weaknesses are so that I can actually surround myself with other people that are good at those details. And so that's really, what are the things that you're not so great at and that you really don't have the energy or need to get really good at those things either. So it doesn't mean that you're not going to work on them. We all have to have a baseline of success, but it doesn't mean that you're going to go, I'm not going to go become a tax auditor. That's not going to be a job in my future.
No, yeah. The other question you might want to ask yourself is, what do you hate doing? Right? What are the things that you would rather, there are certain activities, like you said, taxes is one of those things, right? Like, I would just rather go do everything else instead of my taxes when I know my taxes are due, right? So it always, it's fantastic because I have a great accountant, and I'm going to give a shout out to Ron right now because he's always following up with me and just checking in to say, hey, where are your taxes? Where's your information so I can get your stuff done so I can process it? And, it always comes down to the last minute, the last hour. It's like, all right, I got to put it together. And at some point, you just kind of muster it together and you send it off. But what do you hate doing? What would you, when it comes to those activities, when it comes to weaknesses, it's maybe because you don't do them well, but maybe it's just one of those things that you really don't like to do. So this is opportunity for you to, which actually kind of leads into the next one. Where can you send this work, right? So as a leader inside of an organization, there were certain things I just didn't like to do. So I had team members that helped facilitate some of those things for me. And even when I hired teams, I always looked at, where are some of the areas that are weak for me and how can I hire to those areas? because I don't want
Mm.
people like me all the time. It's great to have people who could challenge me and, you know, help me see a different perspective. But I wouldn't want to just hire that type of person. I also want to hire people in areas where I'm not strong, right? Like I
Yes,
it was even a line by Steve Jobs: hire people smarter than you, right?
100%. Yeah.
So it just gives you an opportunity to kind of be aware of that, and then look at what are some of the possible solutions for this. And
And
sometimes just hiring people, yeah.
And weaknesses also might be an area that you know that you need to level up in order to level up your career.
Mm.
So, if you aren't a public speaker, but you need to do presentations at work, this might be an area that you want to focus on. John, you joined Toastmasters many, many years ago, and it was the catalyst for you to being an expert communicator. So, and now we teach that stuff. So, this is also a weakness can be an opportunity to level up for yourself. And let's get right into that next part of your personal SWOT, which is your opportunities.
Go ahead.
Opportunities are those areas in your life, in your career that you need to level up on them, but you also know that some limiting beliefs might be in your way. And so, I'll just use an example for me. One of my limiting beliefs is that I don't have time to write. Now, that's just utter garbage. It's not true. And we're doing content weekly, John. We're doing 3 times a week the LinkedIn Live show, and we're writing up the experts about that. And I want to make this into a book. We want to make this into a book, but this limiting belief keeps coming up. This opportunity that I'm not a writer, and so that's an opportunity, and that I need to get over in order to take myself to the next level. So what are the opportunities or the limiting beliefs that are showing up for you? And John, what else would you add for the opportunity?
Yeah, no, again, coming down to your belief system, the BS, right?
Yes.
Yes, yeah, cut out the BS, right? Like cut out the belief systems that no longer serve you. And I think we talked about this on the last episode too, right? Like, what are the mindsets that you have that are keeping you from living the life that you want, right? Thinking that something's not possible, right? Or even the expression or the line, "I could never do that," right? Like when people say,
Yes.
how much of a deterrent it is just by saying, "I could never do that." Right? Like I used to say that too, right? Like I could never get into a particular role. I could never be a certain person inside the organization. They were just things that I said that were maybe passed on to me from other people. They weren't necessarily my beliefs.
Oh,
Right?
100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
And 100 times, like 100%. So how many times are we holding on to beliefs that aren't even our own? Right?
Yeah.
Like the expression, money doesn't grow on trees. Like, what do you mean money doesn't grow on trees? It's paper, no? That's where money comes from. But, like how many times are we holding on to belief systems that don't even belong to us? Right?
Yeah.
And if you take
100%.
inventory of that, like, and then the other piece is, recognizing other people's belief systems, right? Like I had a conversation recently with somebody, and they challenged me on a way of thinking, right? Like they had an old school mentality, old school philosophy, old school ideology. And for some people it would have bugged them, right? Like, oh, that's how they think. Why do they think like that? It's, well, that's their level of awareness. Sometimes people just don't know more than what they know. Right.
Yes.
And I'm like, okay, so I never really get upset at anybody. I'm like, okay, that's where your awareness is at. That's cool. Like, I'm not gonna get angry at it, because that's just where you're at. Right. And just being aware of that also helps you kind of open up to say, do I want to accept that? Do I want that in my life as my belief system? And if it's empowering you and it's taking you to places where you want to be, 100% go for it. Just like when you were reading those National Geographic magazines, right? Some people only looked at the magazines, but you're actually living it out, Heather. Like
right.
Mongolia, right? Like how crazy is that? You're with the tribes. You're doing the stuff in the hills and the mountains in Mongolia.
The nomads,
you're doing the treks that the nomads are doing. Like how crazy is that to some
Walk in
people?
the shoes of bigger giants, and that's how
Yeah,
you'll find the path, right? So,
right.
all
So
right. And the
like,
last piece, I know we're going to
yeah,
run out
go
of time. I
ahead,
want to
go
make sure we get it.
ahead.
So, the personal SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunity, and threats. What are the
Threats.
threats to your vision for your life? And these can be external or internal, right? So, we talked about limiting beliefs, but some of them might be threats that, around your weaknesses, around your opportunities. If I want to be a keynote speaker that's traveling around the world, then is my husband going to come with me? Am I going to be is a threat now that I want to travel the whole world being a keynote speaker, but I don't want to leave my family behind. So, that's just a really easy example of knowing what the threats are to your bigger vision of your life. And then it doesn't mean that you have to do anything about it. The awareness will take care of the solutions that will come forward. I know I've often said that I'm going to move to Costa Rica, and I've sort of said in my retirement, and I've eliminated the word retirement out of my vocabulary because I think it's limiting in itself. And we've had lots of conversations about that, John. But what is keeping me in Canada, and why can't I move to Costa Rica? And analyzing those threats and those belief systems will help me uncover when the right time is that I move to Costa Rica, or is it another country completely? So you want to really understand all of those things. And why would you do a personal SWOT analysis? Well, you would do it to just when you're deciding on a career, when you're deciding what courses to take, when you're elevating your own skill set and doing things that you love. Because so often we see, John, and you do this even more than me in the career transition coaching, people take jobs for the sake of making money as opposed to making an impact.
Yeah, no, 100%. You're right. I see it, and then it's almost like a part of them dies, right? It's like, oh, I have to do this. So those people that you look at in cars on Monday mornings driving to work, you can see them, and the funny thing is, it's not just in North America; it's in Europe too.
No.
You see that look on people's faces, like, oh, I gotta go to work again, right? And they're living, as the song would say, everybody is living for the weekend. People are living for the weekend, and I'm like, why? Don't live for the weekend. Like, this is a short journey that we're all on, right? Whether it's 60, 70, 100, whatever number of years it is for you, like, why not just enjoy every moment of it?
Every
Right?
day.
Like,
Every day.
yeah, every day, right? Like, we should be smiling and laughing and giggling. Like, we save those things for vacations, right? And then we call it returning back to reality, right? It's like vacation's over, we're going back to it. I'm like, but this is reality, right? Like, when you're away
There's
and
no
you're experiencing,
do-overs.
yeah, there's no do-overs, right? Like, this is reality. This is the life that you live. And sometimes the language that we use in our day-to-day, right? And this is what we've learned through our NLP work. The language that we use dictates and determines our belief systems and how we live and how we show up. So why live that way, right? Why do the things that you hate to do just because you need to get them done? Like, find another way. There's always another way. There's, one of the exercises I do, and I love this SWOT analysis that you're doing with your own personal life, but there is more than one way to do something, right?
Yes.
Right. And when people get stuck on, wow, there's, this is the only way. No, there's not. You can do something 100 ways, right? Like, there's actually even 1,000,000 different ways you can get something done. And whether it's living in Costa Rica today, right? Like, if you really wanted to, Heather, you could be in Costa Rica next month.
100%.
100%. Right.
Yeah.
So nothing stops you from doing that. So, like, be who you want to be where you want to be, and live the life you want to live. Don't live it for others, live it for you. Right. Like, that's, wow, I didn't know we were going to go there today, but I love that, we've covered this SWOT process in order to help uncover some of that. It almost sounds like we need to do a one-on-one workshop with folks, Heather. That's where I'm trying to think this is going.
I think we should put that out there. If anybody's interested, just direct message us and we'll get you some dates, because this is a powerful, powerful process. Whether you're thinking about a career transition, you're thinking about moving, this is something that I think is an annual process. It's not going to change dramatically, but you can then measure your success along the way. So personal SWOT analysis, and listen, this, once you have this foundation work done, the next decisions in your life become so easy because you just look back and say, does this honor who I am already and who I want to be? And if you've got the answers to those questions, then everything's possible. So here's your call to action. Do sit down, spend 20 to 25 minutes journaling about your personal SWOT analysis, your own strengths, your own weaknesses, your own opportunities, and your own threats to having the best year in 2024 and the best life from now until the end of your life. So let's make sure that we are showing up powerfully and saying yes to all the stuff that scares us, but we're going to do it anyways.
Yeah. Well, just to add on to what Heather said, just drop us a note, drop us a message, or comment below. Let us know. Do you want to do this? Do you want to do this with us? Do you want us to guide you through this process? We would love to do that for you. And I know last year we did a mastermind group, which was fantastic. We want to bring it back. So we want to take you through that process so you can have the best 2024 ever. Okay, that is it for this episode of the Say Yes Movement podcast. Wishing you all a great one. And remember, when you shift your mindset, you shift your life. Take care, everybody. Talk to you soon.